The Locked On Podcast Network presents The Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Luka Doncic and a buzzer-beating tip-in from LeBron James give the Lakers a 120-119 win over Indiana.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast.
Got 34 from Luka Doncic. They got a buzzer-beating tip-in from LeBron James, 24 from Austin Reeves. When things looked good in this game, they looked really good, and when they didn't, they looked really awful. But in the end, Andy, this feels like at least it's one of those wins that has a potential kind of lift some weight off of a team that I think was carrying a little.
The things that need to be fixed still are in need of fixing. This was not a game where the Lakers looked entirely like themselves, but they looked a lot more like themselves more often. And
I don't want to interrupt you, but also in critical moments, like down the stretch, the offense operated really well.
Yeah, there were definitely some good moments offensively, a couple really big threes from Rui, who ended up getting the start in this game. That looks like it's going to be the case moving forward. We had talked about how we suspected at least that until Rui was able to play enough minutes that JJ felt like I can start him without having to screw with the rotation too much. He was going to be put in there, and that was the case. He didn't get a lot of shots in this game. Would still like him to get more, but the ones that he got, he mostly made, and they were really big. But like, you look at 119 for the Pacers and a couple quarters that were shaky defensively. It is important to remember the Pacers are one of the best offensive teams in the league. They average almost 117 points for the season. Since the All-Star break, they're averaging 118 points a game. They shoot 49% from the field for the season, about 37% from behind the arc. They get to the line. And because Tyrese Halliburton is so good taking care of the ball and has it in his hands all the time, and his backup, TJ McConnell, also doesn't turn the ball over, they're a team that you don't have many opportunities to capitalize on mistakes and get out in transition. Like the Lakers did find some opportunities to run, but I don't want to excuse some of the breakdowns because there were some that frankly, you're going to go through the film session and be like, bro, can't have that happen again. But this is not a team that you should look to hold to 105 points or else the defense sucked.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think, we can get into some of the individual elements of the team and how they played and all that over the course of it, because I think like you said, the defense had moments where, especially when they were able to get into the half court, kind of settled. I think for the most part, it looked pretty good. Certainly JJ Redick, that's one of the things he talked about after the game. The offense, I thought there were a lot of things to like, but I mentioned in the open, like this was just a weird game. You had LeBron James entering the fourth quarter, sitting on 3 points. That does not happen often. The guy has scored 10 points or more every game since 2007.
Sitting not just on 3 points, but 0 field goals. Like I don't know.
6.
Yeah, I don't know for sure if that is the longest LeBron's ever gone in a game without a basket, but if it's not, it's got to be pretty damn close. Like,
I don't know how much farther you can go.
This does not happen to LeBron particularly often. We'll get into some of the specifics too. This was also a game from LeBron, and he gets the game-winning tip in, just barely beating the buzzer of a missed floater by Luka. And by the way, this Wednesday, between announcing his revamped Mind the Game podcast now with Steve Nash, absolutely owning the news cycle after an hour-ish sit down with Pat McAfee. Very entertaining sit down, by the way.
He got Stephen A. riled up. Good
Stephen
Lord.
I thought McAfee actually did a really good job.
It was a good interview.
A really good interview. And then this game-winning tip-in. Really nice little Wednesday for LeBron. But we'll get into this. I loved this game from LeBron. Not just the tip-in. Obviously, the tip-in was amazing. But I love this game from LeBron.
I'm glad you brought, we spent, and before everyone gets upset, I am not trying to draw an equivalence in terms of the importance, in terms of the whatever. One of the things about sort of the legendary Game 7 with Kobe and the Celtics is, as bad as he was shooting the ball in that game, Kobe was a train wreck in so many ways. Did so many other things to contribute to winning. And LeBron, aside from the low point total and the inefficiency from the offense, he was not struggling in quite the same way, but he was phenomenal on the glass. He was, I think, consistently the best defender the Lakers had on the floor. And he talked after the game, continuing to find ways to impact how to win. This is a lot of the sort of the platitudes you expect from LeBron in terms of, this is how my game is. And he's stuff he said a million times. And I'm able to contribute even when I'm not scoring. And that there are other guys who can do that, and so on and so on and so on and so on and so on. Except A, it's true. And B, it mattered in this game significantly. They don't win if he doesn't do all the other stuff. And I also think it's really, it's something to notice and something to kind of hang your hat on a little bit. It's like, yeah, we're in this game, probably should have been up by more. If you're the Lakers, you're thinking this with LeBron sitting on 3 points in the fourth quarter. It shows that they can come up with ways to win, and they can stay in games, and they can compete and do all that stuff without having to lean on LeBron as a scorer. They're going to need it. Most games he's going to be able to do that stuff and still have 17 heading into the fourth. I'm not saying 3 points from LeBron after three quarters is ideal. I'm just saying there's a lot of stuff you can look back on if you're the Lakers and say, wow, that's good, in terms of not having to rely on his scoring.
Well, it also just, this was a display of why LeBron, beyond being one of the greatest players of all time, in the conversation on the very short list of greatest of all times, is one of the reasons why he's one of the most versatile and well-rounded players of all time. Because like you mentioned, going into the fourth quarter, he had a near double-double with rebounds and assists. I want to say he was sitting on 7 apiece for both. Yeah. But somewhere in that range.
At least, I think he had the 7 assists, and I think he was at 8 or 9, 7 or 8 or 9, but it was close. Yeah.
Yeah, it was in that range. So he's looking at a potential double-double heading into the fourth, despite having only 3 points. And we mentioned the defense that he played that was often just terrific in this game. And as we've talked about before, LeBron's defensive engagement very often sets the tone for the rest of this team. It often his communication. And LeBron actually talked about after the Orlando loss or a practice in Indiana, just part of getting his conditioning back is actually the ability to keep talking defensively. It's the same way, it's difficult for singers who do a 2.5-hour concert. And also, if they happen to do choreography or whatever, that requires conditioning. That is hard to do with vocalizing. But another piece of this that I loved with LeBron, 0 turnovers after 3 quarters. He didn't get his his first turnover into the fourth quarter.
There you go.
He dribbled the ball off his leg. It was his only turnover of the game. But things like that help offset a night where you're not scoring, but you have so much control over the game. Again, this is not a night that in the grand scheme of things, other than the game winner, I think people are going to remember over the course of LeBron's career. But I really loved the game that he had tonight.
Yeah, I agree. And it was coupled with, obviously the attention. LeBron had a great start to the fourth quarter. He was, integral in pushing the Lakers at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Obviously had the huge tip in at the end off the Luka miss, but it is worth talking both about the way that Luka, 34 points, big contributor to the win on Wednesday night.
Opening day in Major League Baseball. That's today. The best way to get down to the park is Game Time. All baseball season long, you can snag great deals on good seats. The closer it gets to first pitch, plus Game Time shows you your view from your seat before you buy. The way you won't get stuck behind a column and miss half the game. I can't recommend Game Time enough. They show you the all-in price on each ticket. That way you know exactly what you're paying without the surprise fees. You'll even have peace of mind with Game Time because they have event cancellation protection and even job loss assurance. So I can buy with confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. The last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
The Dodgers are going to win the World Series. Shohei Ohtani is going to hit 60 home runs.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I wish I could have been in Japan for the real opening day, but, this is the opening day that counts for Dodger fans. It's the first home game. It is our opener and the first of 81 on the path to 4 million fans in attendance, on the path to first back-to-back World Series titles for anybody in the last quarter of a century. It's a big day in Dodgerland. And we forgot to mention yesterday. Yesterday was our 6-year anniversary of our first episode of Locked On Dodgers. So happy anniversary to us, too.
Yeah, just thought about that when I was saying how long we've been doing the podcast. When I started this podcast, I was living in San Diego. And I only gone to San Diego to LA, so not a big difference. But, a little bit different.
Yeah, you've lived in like 5
I've been in like
places
4 different places, though. Yeah, I've been in
the same house the whole time.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about the Dodgers today. Obviously, we're going to talk about some offensive thoughts and predictions, and then end the segment with a bold prediction. We'll get into the defense. The pitching, a little bit of defense in there mixed in, and we'll talk about postseason and beyond. So let's start with the offense, Jeff. The Dodgers are expected to be one of, if not the best offense in baseball. There is the big three of Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman at the top, but the Dodgers lineup looks a little bit longer than maybe it did at this point last year.
Yeah, there's definitely potential for a lot of length. There's question marks. We don't know what Michael Conforto is going to do. We don't really even know what Tommy Edman's going to do. As great as a postseason as he has, as good a player as he is, his actual regular season numbers last year weren't great. So we'll have to see how he does. Will Smith, obviously, most years has had a good first half and a less great second half. And so hopefully he can stretch that out. But the fact is, those guys might be the 7, 8, 9 hitters a lot of days because you're looking at who am I forgetting of because I can think of the top 5 and then I can think of those 3 guys. Who am I?
Is Muncy in your 5 or Will Smith in your 5?
I was thinking Muncy in the 5. I was Teoscar cleanup, Muncy 5th, and then Will Smith. There's somebody else. Andy Pages. Yeah. Okay. So Pages probably batting 9th. And there's worse things than maybe the guy with the most raw power on the team. Now you can't say that with Shohei Ohtani on the team. Second most raw power on the team batting 9th. There's some potential there.
Yeah, and Pages has done well enough at making adjustments, hitting mistakes. At the very least, like Pages is going to punish mistakes for the most part, especially when it comes from a left-handed pitcher. So I'm excited to see him offensively. I know there maybe are some people that aren't too excited to see him defensively. I'm hoping he can just not make any errors. There may be balls he doesn't get to, but if he can take the right route, at least that'll be beneficial. But on offense, it's one of those things where last year we saw the 7, 8, 9 kind of become that black hole. Has a chance to not do that this year, at least early on. And then, there could be reinforcements later in the year with Ha-Seong Kim, or if someone else emerges, or, Glasses Kike, who kind of emerged a little bit last year as a guy that could be a potential guy that plays a lot more often than not. So, Jeff, last year the D-backs were the team that had the most runs scored. Are we thinking Dodgers passed them up? They lost Christian Walker. They replaced them with Bo Naylor, but I don't know. I feel like this Dodger team is going to score in bunches.
Josh Naylor, not Bo Naylor, right?
Yeah.
They got Chubby Naylor.
Wrong Naylor, yeah.
Yeah. I think the D-backs got worse and the Dodgers got better. And I expect the Dodgers to lead the league in scoring and, be at least in the top 2 or 3 in scoring and the top 2 or 3 in preventing runs, which is a really good combination towards winning games because that's how you win games, is by scoring more runs than your opponents. And the Dodgers seem well equipped to do that on both sides, specifically on the offensive side. It's going to be interesting the first little bit of the season because we do have Shohei recovering from surgery, Freddie recovering from surgery, Mookie recovering from illness. Your MV3 all could potentially be a little bit slow starting this year. That maybe not. Maybe they'll be just fine. But it's one of those things where it is kind of nice that the Dodgers do have so many off days this early in the season, so that seems like the schedule kind of lines up with their needs health-wise. But also, like we've talked about, that gives the other guys in the lineup the opportunity. Max Muncy, Teoscar Hernandez, Will Smith, those guys, and even farther down, Michael Conforto, Andy Pages, the chance to step up and kind of take some of that weight off the MV3 and kind of set the tone for the whole season. Because, we saw last year, there were several times early in the season where we're like, the Dodgers are in first place and they're really not playing that well. They're really not clicking. And eventually they clicked and they won the World Series. And that's kind of what I'm expecting this year again, is a little bit of it's going to take a few weeks to a month to really start to click.
Yeah. And spoiler, we have a bonus episode coming with one of the producers of the Apple series doc. And when I was watching that doc, I don't go back and watch the games as often. I feel like maybe as often as I should, but you got to think like the first 2 runs of game 1 and the last 2 runs of game 5 were all sack flies in the World Series. The Dodgers got it done in a few different ways last year. And I think that's where, this offense can be a little bit different than maybe years past, where it's not all power. Ohtani hit for average last year. Mookie hit for average last year. Freddie, usually hits for average. Teo did a pretty good job hitting for average. Guys beyond that, maybe not as much, but again, maybe not the strikeout heavy team that we're used to seeing. And that's going to help put up a lot of runs because, like I said, those were 4 key important runs that all came because somebody did their job.
Yeah, but also Tarek Strubal's pitching for the Tigers tomorrow, so don't freak out if the Dodgers don't score a bunch of runs because he is maybe the best pitcher in baseball.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's end this with a bold prediction of yours about the offense, whether it's the offense entirely or an individual player, however you want to do it.
My bold prediction, I hope it's bold. Mookie Betts is going to steal the most bases he has in a season since he came to the Dodgers. He stole 30 his MVP season in 2018. But then the most he's stolen with the Dodgers is last year's 16. I think Mookie Betts is going to steal 28 bases this year and, not necessarily change his game, go back to being a speedster, but I think we're going to see a more aggressive Mookie Betts on the bases.
All right, I like that. I like stolen bases. I'm a fan of that. All right. Last year my bold prediction was 6 guys with at least 30 homers. I'm going to half that and up the ante. So I'm going to go 3 guys with at least 40 homers. For bonus points, it'll be Ohtani, Teo, and Muncy. But, yeah, I think the Dodgers are going to have 3 guys with at least 40 homers.
I like that. And I have a hard time disagreeing with that. That's a fun one. I definitely would be on board with that. I like that one a lot.
Yeah, last year, one of yours was the back-to-back-to-back.
They did it once. I said twice.
Right?
They did it once, to lead off the game. And you know what? Maybe they'll get the other one this year for me.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels.
We are going into Thunderdome. Matt Sheehan from Locked On Spartans, Stephen Willis, Locked On Ole Miss. I want to say thank you to all the Michigan State fans that have been making my videos very successful this week. Thank you very much for that. Matt, I'm just going to assume that you didn't send them down there, but listen to this. This is funny. I understand that people are passionate about their teams. I get that. I understand.
A little bit. Yeah.
You think they can do it, but people in my comments telling me that Ole Miss has not seen a team as good as Michigan State.
Aggressive. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ole Miss is not going to be able to match up with a defensive team like Michigan State.
Okay.
Ole Miss is not going to be able to handle the depth of Michigan State. And I was like, are you aware that Ole Miss beat Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas twice, and BYU? I mean, are you guys sure that you understand what's going on here?
Mm-hmm. There's two paths you could have to March Madness fandom. It is just being so blindly defiant and confident in your team that you will convince yourself that they can beat the Golden State Warriors, or you could just constantly live in a state of worry and anxiety, and that's the road that I travel down, Steven. It's not the healthiest road, but that's where I'm at right now because, well, it's awesome being a Michigan State fan. We've been doing this tournament for 27 straight years, but you also see some I believe in 27 years in the tournament. You know that nothing is a given. And while there is reason for Michigan State to be confident in this game, of course, like, yes, we do have a really strong defense, stronger than any in the SEC. I'm just going to go ahead and just stop just a little short of that. Are we a deep team? Absolutely. Are we as deep as like an Auburn team? I don't know about that. But look, there's many good things going on for Michigan State, but yeah, we're going against a team that is beyond battle tested, playing in the SEC, because it was fun to start the tournament, you know, seeing the Oklahomas of the world go down and thinking, overrated basketball conference. And then shucks, here you guys are with a really good showing in the Sweet 16. It turns out that no, you guys were actually a good conference all along. So it's been a good Michigan State team. Are they going to be as good as top flight SEC schools? Stay tuned to find out. It's going to be a good one on Friday night.
It's like we said off air. If you are in the Sweet 16, you're good enough to beat the team you're playing. There are no easy wins. There's no, honestly, and this is not an insult to mid-majors, there's no West Coast Conference team in this tournament.
Right. Yeah.
There's no Ohio Valley that just made it through. Mm-hmm. These are 4 power conference, battle-tested conference teams that are lined up. And it makes sense that this is the most highest rated NCAA tournament in 32 years because of that.
I don't know if I want it every single year where you don't get like a St. Peter story or a Fairleigh Dickinson story or anything like that. But every once in a while, just having heavyweights only make it to the Sweet 16, it makes for great basketball. Because usually in, tournaments past, okay, you want to see some first round upsets, but by the time the second weekend rolls around, no disrespect to all the mid-major schools out there, but I'm all set seeing like, what would it be, like a 13 seed play, I don't know what it would be, like a 2 seed, something like that. I'm all good. Like, this is going to be just banger after banger after banger of basketball games on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, which is like what we want in life. We just want to be entertained with high-level hoops, and this is what we're going to get, especially out of our 2 teams, Steven. It's nice.
Yeah, it should be fun. It's like I told somebody today, it's like, hey, we play apparently high-level basketball now, so that's cool. We're a basketball school.
I know.
Yeah, seriously. This is like our, 12th NCAA tournament game.
Wow.
In basketball history, yeah.
Sure.
And this is the second time only that Ole Miss has ever made it to the Sweet 16, which is our longest run ever.
Man.
So what we have here is a blue blood, because Michigan State is a blue blood. We've all seen the YouTube videos of Magic Johnson and all of that going all the way through Mateen Cleaves. We all seen that. Whenever you try to find Ole Miss basketball videos on YouTube, a little bit of a different story. That's Bryce Drew and not much else.
Right. It's a good callback right there. No, but I mean, when you get Chris Beard as a coach, he could make me and my 4 closest friends that are all below 6 feet tall a really competitive basketball team. And when you guys have experienced older players like you do down at Ole Miss, well, of course, showing up to the Sweet 16, not that big of a surprise. It's actually one of the few Sweet 16 teams that I got correct on my brackets. So I went about 4 of 16, but yeah, got the Rebels in mind. So thanks, Chris Beard, for that. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and immediately after the game, when Tom Izzo was basically informed of who he was going to play, his instinct, his reaction immediate when he found out that he was playing Chris Beard was not happy.
It was PTSD a little bit from 2019. Yeah, the Final Four against Texas Tech. And it's funny. I don't know if the coaching staff feels this way. I don't know if other fans feel this way. But to me, that game feels like it happened 2 seasons ago, not 6. So this is still fresh in the mind of all of the state fans. And obviously, just like I said, and just like we've all seen the last few weeks here, Chris Beard still just a fine coach in the game of basketball.
This game is going to be so much fun because I love defensive basketball. And having Chris Beard as a coach, that makes you're in a good position if you like. Tom Izzo, they've played good defense for years, decades even. That's what they do at Michigan State. So, Matt, I was talking about you before we went on. I think this game has a chance to be a major league rock fight to where the final score is something like 59-55, and everybody's like going, what just happened? And it's going to come down to one or two steals, turnovers by Ole Miss, or rebounds by Michigan State. That is going to be the difference in this ballgame.
I could not agree with you anymore. It is going to be a hearkening back to like mid-2000s Big Ten basketball, and Michigan State fans know what I'm talking about. And well, Ole Miss fans are about to find out this Friday if this game goes according to what we think is going to happen. Because, yes, both teams, they flex their defensive muscle. And I think Ole Miss is really going to try to get Michigan State in some half-court offense. They might not even attempt a single offensive rebound the entire game, just getting back on defense to set up that picket fence to limit Michigan State in transition. So when Michigan State is pigeonholed in a half-court offense, they can have their issues. Also, on the contrary, Michigan State, just like I said, really strong defensively, specifically on that perimeter. So, yeah, this is going to be a race to 50, 55 points here. There's going to be blood all over the court. Every single fan that's not a Spartan or a Rebel fan is going to say, oh, my God, turn this game off right now. This is disgusting. But real ball knowers like us will know this is how the game is played like men, Steven. I cannot wait for it. It's going to be nasty and grimy. Oh, man, bring me back to those days.
Oh, it's going to be amazing. Absolutely amazing. I can't wait. And this is the advantage that I think Ole Miss has in this game. Okay. This is the singular advantage. In the no-middle defense that Chris Beard runs, they're very good defensively. They clog up the middle. They want you to kick out. The weak spot in that defense is the corner three-point shot. Mm-hmm. Well, in this tournament, the rims appear harder.
They're tight.
It's a tight rim. Yep. The balls are overinflated. There's not many balls that rattle in. Yeah. That's an advantage, Chris Beard, and another reason I think this is going to be a rock fight. So if Ole Miss can avoid foul trouble, especially Dre Davis and Malik Dian, the bigs that they actually have, force Michigan State out of the lane. Do not let them drive. They did a good job against Carolina not doing that. They did a good job against Iowa State not doing that. If they can pull that off, I do think they have the advantage in this game.
And where I see the Michigan State advantage is, and you don't have to look hard for it, you don't have to do a lot of squinting, it is going to be the rebounding margin here, because Ole Miss outside the top 300 in a few rebounding metrics, of course. And, well, it's not that Michigan State is a good rebounding team. They have been elite so far this season, especially on the offensive boards. And you saw it against Bryant. I'm not going to say that we would have, lost that game should they not have gotten so many second chance points, but that is what really extended their lead in that game and made it a comfortable last 10 minutes of that stretch. And this is hardly the only time they've done that so far this season is, like I said, the half-court offense, there are moments where it could be a little more desirable than what you're seeing. But what really helps is when you get 2 or 3 cracks at the hoop. And Michigan State is just an incredible offensive rebounding team. So that's where Michigan State easily sees an advantage there, just because, again, it's top 5 rebounding team versus a team outside the top 300. But again, weird things happen in March. We'll see if anything changes, but just right on the paper and with your eyeballs, that's where I see the advantage for Michigan State.
Yes. Ole Miss needs to keep the rebounding. They need to lose by 10 or less in the game.
That's fair. Yeah.
If they can lose, they lose by 10 or less, they can turn you over enough to get the possessions back. Yep. In the games against Florida, in the game that they got blown out at Auburn, it was like a 25 rebound disparity. It was a mauling. They got beat by Mississippi State. They got mauled on the boards by 20 rebounds. Vanderbilt got them. They mauled them on the boards by like 20 rebounds or something like that. So if Ole Miss can keep that rebounding disparity to about 10 or less, Iowa State was a big team too. It was something to where you thought that this rebounding thing was going to show itself. And at the beginning of the game, it absolutely showed itself. And Iowa State probably had 6 or 7 offensive rebounds before the first TV timeout. The rebounding margin in that game was Iowa State +4. Ole Miss was able to handle that fight on the boards. And whenever Ole Miss started kind of playing even on the boards with Iowa State, all of a sudden you saw a 20-2 run by Ole Miss against Iowa State, and that game was over.
Also, the hot shooting too from Ole Miss, and this is what I wanted to ask you about, because in the first 2 tournament games, Ole Miss, you guys are shooting, I believe it's 19 of 39 from behind the arc, which is like incredible. Might not be the most sustainable number, but it's not like you guys have been a bad shooting team all season. I believe you're humming around 34%, roughly 120th in the nation. But another possible advantage I see for Michigan State here is that they are top 5 in the nation at opposing 3-point percentage, and it's easy to see why they have the athletes on the outside, whether it's, your point guard, Jeremy Fears, or even outside of him, Jace Richardson, for as good as he can be offensively. He's that strong defensively, too. You tack on Trey Holloman and Jaden Akins. It is a really strong package on the perimeter there. Mm. Do you think that hot shooting is something you can sustain in this game, or are you a little worried about a slight dip here coming up in this one?
Oh, I'm worried. Like I said, just judging by the scores, I think the 3-point shooting is going to come down. Okay. The key in this game for Ole Miss is probably going to be Dre Davis and Malik Dia. Mm-hmm. Yep. It's not going to be Padula or any of the guards, because Michigan State's going to D those guards up. They just are. But D is a matchup problem. It doesn't matter who you are, unless you're Janai Broome. It's a matchup problem. He's shooting threes. He's one of the more athletic players on the floor. He's 6'9", 260 pounds. He can play absolute bully ball.
Yeah.
Whenever that happens, that is how the extra pass can come up and the open 3-point shots can happen. They need to force Michigan State to help. If you can do that, find the open person, hit the open shots. They did not hit the open shots in the SEC tournament. That was the difference there. That probably cost them the Auburn game, not making 3-point shots in that game. But if they can do that, they're going to be in good shape. A lot of people don't realize about this Ole Miss team. They're like, oh, they've lost 3 games over the last month or so. Mm-hmm. Those 3 games are 2 games to Auburn and 1 to Florida.
Not bad.
That's those 3 games. Everybody else they've beaten. So I think it's going to be a war. And the teams that have been on the 2-seed line and below, I think Ole Miss is 2-0 against those teams on the 2-seed line. They're 1-0 on the 3-seed line. It's the ones that they had problems with this year. Auburn and Florida really kind of chewed them up. And like I said, Michigan State has the athleticism to do a rebounding number on this Ole Miss team. Mm-hmm. They absolutely do. No, not a single person will be surprised if Michigan State wins this game. But not a single person should be surprised if Ole Miss wins this game either.
Opening day in Major League Baseball. That's today. The best way to get down to the park is Game Time. All baseball season long, you can snag great deals on good seats. The closer it gets to first pitch, plus Game Time shows you your view from your seat before you buy. The way you won't get stuck behind a column and miss half the game. I can't recommend Game Time enough. They show you the all-in price on each ticket. That way you know exactly what you're paying without the surprise fees. You'll even have peace of mind with Game Time because they have event cancellation protection and even job loss assurance, so I can buy with confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. The last-minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
Tennessee and Kentucky in the Sweet 16?
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
It's Tennessee and Kentucky, not in Thompson-Boling at Food City Center, not in Rupp. It's Tennessee, Kentucky, and Indy in the Sweet 16. These two teams have played over 200 times in program in the series history. Not one time have they met in the postseason. In fact, this will be Tennessee's first postseason appearance against a team from the SEC, which I find that hard to believe as well. Any way you want to spin it, it's rare, but it should be a good game in Indianapolis on Friday night.
Yeah, this is one of the biggest stages you could have possibly asked for such a big college basketball rivalry, one that's been extremely heated over the last several years, and one that I think is going to kind of have a new spark to it, I guess, now with Mark Pope at the helm winning his first 2 games against the Vols. And everybody and their mother on the internet has told me it's near impossible to win 3 straight games against an opponent. And then Kentucky ran into Alabama for a 3rd time in the SEC tournament, and we saw how that turned out. So I
was going to let you know that as well. So,
yeah, I appreciate it. Maybe we could just end the show there. Like, Kentucky can't beat a team 3 times. Tennessee's going to win by 90. Book it.
Full curtains. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, but this one feels like it's got a little bit of an extra spark to it. And I'm super excited about that because throughout the course of this season, I've kind of been snake bitten, by the past several years with Cal, where you walk into a matchup, you look at it on paper, and you say, yeah, okay, we should win this game, and then they find a way to lose it. And here you are now, where Kentucky has miraculously won. It feels like 2 games in the Sweet 16 where it felt like they were kind of on their last breath there. It felt like with all the injuries and everything, but here we are now. And this Tennessee game, I'm not uber confident heading into it, but I feel better than I have in most big time matchups so far this season.
And again, there's no reason not to, right? Just because Tennessee's lost 2 games this season to Kentucky doesn't mean Tennessee can't beat Kentucky. But if I'm a Kentucky fan right now, it's like, okay, I've beaten this team twice. Like, I mean, certainly know it's not going to be easy, but like you've seen it twice. You've seen it under a couple of different circumstances as well with Kentucky being shorthanded. Before we move on, though, I do want to ask you this real quick. How sick are you that Cal's in the Sweet 16?
I personally, I don't know if my listeners are going to really like this, but I'm happy for his kind of change of scenery. I'm happy that he found it again. It being the ability to win in the postseason. Yeah. It's just one question: where the crap was it for the past half decade? Where was that fire? Where was that energy? And where you've had objectively, I think 3 teams that were infinitely better than this year's Arkansas team, and you found a way to blow it. Albeit, some heroic performances, some things that you just simply don't see every day with Golke and with St. Peter's. And again, on paper, those were games that Kentucky should have won. He found a way to lose them. Whereas with teams like, honestly, St. John's, I think it's the best 2 seed they could have possibly gotten in the round of 32. I mean, I was about to say, St. John's is a game that they should have lost. But when you think about it, uber athletic and all that. But anyway, back to what you were saying about Cal. I'm happy that he found it again. Sucks that it wasn't with Kentucky over the last 5 years, but I think both parties needed to kind of split. And you know what? Good for him. As long as we don't run into him in the national championship, cool.
Yeah, I mean, Kentucky obviously in the Sweet 16 after a very kind of roller coaster like regular season. So I mean, that's a great year in itself with Mark Pope, and of course a big Sweet 16 game coming up here on Friday against Tennessee. So far in the NCAA tournament, Tennessee squared off against the 15th seeded Wofford. And it was Chaz Lanier, man. Chaz Lanier's first ever, NCAA tournament game. I was going to say he was one and done. He had never won a postseason game ever. 4 years in the Atlantic Sun. He just, went one and done in the conference tournament. And until they beat Texas in the quarterfinals of the SEC tournament, Chaz Lanier never even won a game past the regular season. But 29 points. Only 2 players, one of them being Dalton Knecht, had scored more points in a Tennessee win in postseason history. So, I mean, that was the Chaz Lanier show there in game 1. And then game 2, he became Tennessee's single-season all-time three-point shooting leader, passing Chris Lofton again. It's Chaz Lanier 1 with like 116 threes in a season. Then it's Chris Lofton on the list there. But those are kind of the stories. I mean, Tennessee just absolutely annihilated UCLA in the second half. The final score, 67-58. I don't know if you watched it. I mean, that doesn't no justice. Tennessee beat the crap out of them. Yeah. And went to a 1-2-2 trap there at the end of the first half and allowed Tennessee to go on an 8-0 run in that half and then just kind of stormed away. So it's been 2 games that Tennessee handled physically, I wouldn't say from the get-go, but pretty much almost the entirety of the 40 minutes, at least 30 minutes, and, kind of cruising on into the Sweet 16, but knowing that it's going to be a challenge. Tell me about Kentucky's pass so far against Troy and, of course, against Illinois.
Well, I do want to say this about Lanier first real quick. And if I'm not mistaken, in both contests against Kentucky, I don't know what his point total was at the end of the game, but he struggled efficiency-wise. And, Kentucky fans haven't seen, what Chaz Lanier is capable of, at least not at this level. But this was a guy that Kentucky wanted badly. In the offseason. He ends up going to the Vols. And look, if you're gonna try and find a way to win this one, if you're Tennessee, you got to have your best player playing hot. And that's what he's doing right now. So I think Kentucky fans need to be absolutely aware of that. It's like, hey, this is a guy that you didn't see pop off in the first 2 games. Very much so could. In fact, I would actually expect it in this matchup. Yeah. But as far as Kentucky goes, this Troy team that they faced off against in the Sun Belt, I didn't say it publicly, but watching them and looking at them on paper, it was like, if Kentucky does not win this game in convincing fashion, there's something has gone horribly wrong. Because as good as they were coming out of the Sun Belt, I mean, physically they were just nothing compared to what Kentucky had to offer. And look, that's a great defense. Scott Cross is a great coach for the Trojans, but they couldn't keep up. They just simply could not keep up. Kentucky kept hammering the ball inside. Otega Oweh was incredible, 20 points, super efficient. And you saw Kentucky just kind of take over that one in the second half after having a little bit of run there in the first. And you see that Illinois game heading into it. I was really worried about the 3-point shooting. Illinois, one of the most volatile teams in the entire country. Up, down, up, down, up, down. They got super hot in their first game against the 11 seed Xavier. And, I had so many people tell me, all right, this is where they get cold. And I didn't believe it. And then you watched it and it was like they went ice cold from 3. It just simply was not enough. I think maybe in another reality, they find a way to win that game. But Kentucky, I think, executed on the offensive end set-wise about as well as I have seen them execute this entire season. I mean, it was incredible. You were adding new wrinkles. You were adding more Peja stuff outside of your normal zoom action. You saw Kentucky's 5 men who operate the offense so much, making really good passes, sound decisions. Kobe Brea and Lamont Butler, everything they seem so patient despite playing with such a high pace. And that's eventually what got it done in the second half against the Fighting Illini, is that Kentucky just took over in those first few minutes. Kobe Brea went on a spurt where he hit 4 shots in a row, and it wasn't all she wrote, obviously, with the Illinois' ability to score, but they just kind of held them at arm's length the entirety of the matchup. And so heading into this one, I would say both teams are playing extremely high-level basketball. It's a fun little note here, Eric, actually, about this Kentucky team. I know we'll get into specifics with matchups and stuff, but I wanted to mention this here as early as possible. Kentucky gave up 98 points to Ole Miss on February 4th, I believe. They were 112th in adjusted defensive efficiency on KenPom after they played that game. They're 45th right now.
Wow.
They have completely turned things around. Mark Pope apparently cut his hand wide open on a chair in Oxford at halftime, just angry at the performance. You could see it in the post game. And since that point, chairs were broken and defense was had since that point. And so, both these teams, I think, firing on all cylinders. Man, this is shaping up to be a really good game in Indy. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, it should be just great theater.
Opening day in Major League Baseball. That's today. The best way to get down to the park is Gametime. All baseball season long, you can snag great deals on good seats. The closer it gets to first pitch, plus Gametime shows you your view from your seat before you buy. The way you won't get stuck behind a column and miss half the game. I can't recommend Gametime enough. They show you the all-in price on each ticket. That way you know exactly what you're paying without the surprise fees. You'll even have peace of mind with Gametime because they have event cancellation protection and even job loss assurance, so I can buy with confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. The last-minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars.
Houston plays Purdue. Purdue is 24-11. Matt Painter's been there for quite a minute now. National championship game a year ago, but I looked a lot different without Zach Edey, who is now in the NBA. Player of the year in the NCAA last year. I probably would have taken Jamal myself, but Zach Edey did win that award. They got, in my opinion, the best point guard as far as consistency goes in America, and Braden Smith this year. The 6-foot junior is averaging 8.5 assists a game, 16 points per game, is a floor general, really like his game a lot. He also, for its worth, is a pretty decent defender, given that he's 6 feet tall. I say that to say that, like, while he is going to have a size disadvantage in this one, Braden Smith's not the kind of guy that's, like, going to be intimidated defensively by what Houston's doing. He's getting over 2 steals a game, right? He's forcing a bunch of other turnovers too, with like just disruptive play that doesn't really show up on a stat sheet. The other guy you got to watch out for with Purdue is Trey Kaufman-Renn, the big guy, 6'9". He listed at 230, at base closer to 240. Again, 20 points and 6.5 rebounds per contest. He's just a big bully inside, shoots really high percentage because his shots are really close to the rim, benefits a lot from the great passing of Braden Smith, but also kind of style that Purdue is playing this year, really kind of filling that Zach Edey interior role in a lot of what they're doing. And then those two, and then the third guy, Fletcher Lawyer, who's shooting 45% from 3 and about 13.5 points per game. Those 3 guys really don't come off the floor for Purdue, and a lot of their identity gets tied up in those three guys. I thought it was interesting, though, when looking at Purdue's lineup. I think of Purdue as being really big, Big Ten power, muscly around kind of program, and they have been that somewhat in the past. In this year's iteration of Purdue, they actually kind of line up with Houston, where like Houston might be able to outsize this team. Braden Smith is, again, 6 feet tall. Lawyer is 6'5". They start another guard that is 6'3". His name is CJ Cox. And then they also start, like I said, I mentioned Trey Kaufman, who is 6'9". And then I'm trying to make sure I get this last name correct here as far as who the starter is. Caleb First, F-U-R-S-T, First. Caleb First is, I guess, technically the power forward. He's 6'6". One place has him at 6'7". He's more of a perimeter guy as well. So suddenly looking at a team that Houston matches up with size-wise pretty well. It's probably one of the only handful of times that you've ever seen that for Houston. Further, it's a team that also wants to play a very slow pace, a lot like Houston. Houston is like 350th in pace of play, meaning possessions per game. Purdue is sitting at 299th, so not quite as slow as Houston is, but just in the same kind of category. They also are 9th in 3-point percentage this season. They shoot 38.5% per game, 38.5% from three per game. Houston is first in 3-point percentage this season at 39.8% per game. So in a lot of ways, a look-alike in some of those categories. I think the big deal here is going to be who kind of dictates the intensity and physicality of the game. Trey Kaufman-Renn is going to be down around the rim. Do a great job with him of playing 4 out, 1 in, and using angles and his bluntly wide body and strength to seal off and cut off things, to create good entry pass and good entry lanes. Is one of the ways that Braden Smith will get the ball to him, get some of those assists that we're talking about. Braden Smith will also do high pick and roll actions with other guys that you have to respect on the pick and pop actions. And from there, he'll get downhill and have drop-off opportunities in 2-on-1 kind of situations with big guys to get to Kaufman-Renn. The other thing I'll point out is that of guys that are shooting over 2 threes per game, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4 guys shooting 38% or better from out behind the arc. Pretty impressive to look at. Smith himself shooting 38.5% on over 6 attempts per game. Fletcher Lawyer, I mentioned 45% from 3 at just over 4.5 attempts per game. So those two guys can really, really shoot. And I think that's also dictating how they get those entry passes in a 4-out, 1-in scenario, because they're taking advantage of the fact that you can't just leave the big guy backside help and all that kind of stuff to come double him. Taking advantage of that. You can't leave to go help the big guy, I should say, and come from the backside to help out. CJ Cox is the other guy I mentioned as far as their starting lineup goes that shoots decent amount of threes, almost 2.5 threes per game, shooting 40% on those. All these guys, exception of Braden Smith, are a lot of catch and shoot, swing and rotation kind of 3-point shooters. Purdue does pretty solid in terms of their assists per game. They're over half of their field goals, I should say, are on assists, meaning that they're moving the ball around and catch and shoot, catch and score kind of situations. Not a lot of ISO ball is what that means. You see it in the way they work this 4-out, 1-in, which is impressive because so much 4-out, 1-in feels like it turns into James Harden ISO hero ball, right? Other things I think I noticed when I look at this team offensively is that they kind of feel like if they can't get the ball into Kaufman-Renn, they don't do a whole lot of scoring inside. Now, that hasn't happened a whole lot this season. They do have some impressive wins. They beat Alabama. They beat Ole Miss. They pulled off a bunch of Big Ten tournament wins. Or Big Ten regular season wins. I'm sorry, I didn't quite get as far in the Big Ten tournament. It did beat Michigan, did beat Rutgers a couple times. Rutgers has 2 guys that be drafted in the top 5 this year. So they've beaten good teams. But they also lost some questionable ones. And then as far as common opponents go, Houston had an exhibition with A&M before the season opened. They lost A&M, so you can kind of watch that matchup They also lost to Auburn by double digits, almost 20. And so you kind of see how physical games, Auburn, A&M, Michigan State, right? They really can kind of push Purdue around some because Purdue is not very big, right? The deal will be as if that pushing and shoving at the level of physicality is a good thing for Houston, or if it's a whistled thing for Houston. Sampson's been upfront loud about how Houston will foul you, and they're not really apologetic about it. So what does that mean happens, down the stretch here? I will say, in looking at this, that I think Houston wins, and I think it's going to be a tough game to play. We'll talk about the road aspect of this game in a second, but Kim Pom has the game as a 7-point win for Houston, which would actually be a bigger margin of victory than they had against Gonzaga in the round of 32. I think the big difference here is that Houston's going to do their darndest to make sure that Kaufman-Wren does not get the ball in isolation position in the post. They're going to recover out to threes with the X-out, cross-outs on the back, and they're going to try to force someone else to beat them off the bounce, not in catch-and-shoot situations.
Opening day in Major League Baseball. That's today. The best way to get down to the park is Game Time. All baseball season long, you can snag great deals on good seats. The closer it gets to first pitch, plus Game Time shows you your view from your seat before you buy. The way you won't get stuck behind a column and miss half the game. I can't recommend Game Time enough. They show you the all-in price on each ticket. That way you know exactly what you're paying without the surprise fees. You'll even have peace of mind with Game Time because they have event cancellation protection and even job loss assurance, so I can buy with confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. The last-minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
So did the Aaron Rodgers thing reopen or not, or what's going on here?
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast.
Kwesi had a press conference. Like 65% of it was about Aaron Rodgers, and the conclusions that you may draw, depending on where you get your information, will differ wildly. If you're the kind of person that will block out all headlines and analysis and whatever, soundbitey stuff that you will find from podcasts and blogs and stuff like this and stuff like the newspaper and all that, and you just watched it, you're going to have a totally different idea than if you read headlines. Here are some headlines that I found. On NFL.com, the headline is Vikings GM Kwesi Adofo-Mensah discusses talks with Aaron Rodgers, JJ McCarthy's path to starting. Yahoo Sports, Vikings GM sends strong message on Aaron Rodgers' pursuit. CBS Sports, Aaron Rodgers' future, Vikings GM doesn't rule out more talks with QB, but happy with JJ McCarthy, quote, right now. Good old Mike Florio goes the direct route. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah doesn't rule out a pursuit of Aaron Rodgers. Sports Illustrated, Vikings reopen door to steal Aaron Rodgers from Steelers. That one gets the prize from me. So if you just Googled it and you found all those headlines, you might start to get a sense that the Vikings are maybe changing their mind on this. That the report we got last week from Tom Pelissero that they were out on this was either false, or that maybe something has changed, or that it wasn't the whole story or something like that. And that Vikings Aaron Rodgers is still the big story of the offseason. And man, that's not what dude said. What is in the headlines becomes what is the truth. That's just a thing of media, just a truism of media. And when it doesn't match what I think the real truth actually is, I get really frustrated. And I know the reason for that. It's a profit deal. Everyone's fighting for clicks. Welcome to the digital age. I get it. But I guess what I want to do today is for you and me, dear listener, to try to rise above that level. I'm not even going to call it of misinformation, but of misleading information. To not get misled today. Let's not be gullible today. And instead, let's listen to the freaking quotes. I've got an editing software. I can just pull them out and show them to you. So that's what I'm going to do. We're going to listen to the quotes today. So we'll start with the Aaron Rodgers thing. And what I want you to do is keep in mind that if you Googled this, you get this idea that like Aaron Rodgers is still very much on the table. So he was asked, what's the deal with Aaron Rodgers? Why were you looking into him? Here is what he had to say.
I'll always say is it's our job as a personnel group to make sure we're aware of every potential option. And again, we're trying to make sure we solve for scenarios that we don't know could possibly happen. We want to make sure that there's competition in the room to make sure that if you remember last offseason when JJ and Sam were really competing, that brought the best out of both of them. And so you want an environment that's like that, a supportive environment to also just challenge each other but grow and learn and all those different things. And so we're trying to solve for a lot of different things at once. And from all those conversations comes a list of names and maybe an order and an intentional plan on how to best solve for those things. So, a player like him, he's always going to be in those conversations. But from our delineations at that time, we're happy with where we are going forward. But obviously the caliber of player and just all our situations, we had to make our considerations.
So if you hadn't seen all those headlines, to me, that sounds like a past tense autopsy on why you decided to look into this idea that many find outlandish. A perfectly fair thing to have to answer for, and I think his answer made a lot of sense. Competition's important, covering the unknowns is important. What if JJ McCarthy gets hurt? What if he's in training camp and he's not as good as he was last year? What if he shows up out of shape or something like that? There's all kinds of what ifs you can't do anything about, and no matter how good you feel about JJ McCarthy, which Kwesi had a lot of praise for JJ McCarthy that may or may not, might not end up getting included in this episode, but he had it. You can go listen to it for yourself. And by the way, if you think that I was deceptive in any way about how I pulled these clips out, go ahead and listen to yourself and let me know. I tried my best not to be. I tried to just grab the crux of the answer, the best that I understood what he was trying to say. That was what I tried to do. If you think I was being deceptive, I apologize, but I'm trying really hard not to be part of that same problem, which is why I'm giving you 45-second clips rather than singular sound bites or tweets, right? So anyways, later in the presser, he was asked this.
How did it end with Rodgers? Was it his choice, your choice that it wasn't going to fit?
I think we got to a place where we just said everybody was transparent, but right now we feel good about where we're going. And that's really how it ended. It's ultimately up to him. It's hard to talk about a player who's not under contract for our team and who plays for, obviously isn't a member of this team. It's ultimately up to him what he decides to do with his future. But that's kind of where we left it. I know Kevin and him have a great relationship still. They'll still have a relationship. They'll keep talking. But right now I'm focused on the two players that are in our room right now and in my personnel process for going forward.
Again, sounds very past tense, doesn't it? It's very this thing was over. So the idea that you might get from the headlines that this isn't over really does not match up with the tone of these answers. It sounds very done. This is why we didn't do it, right? This is where it ended. We determined that we liked where our room was at and we decided to move forward with that. And taking this and twisting it because he said the words right now, to me, is either outright deceptive just for the sake of keeping a clickbaity story alive, or just a gross misunderstanding of tone. The kind of thing that a sociopath that can't understand when someone is sad or happy and can't read faces would do. I feel like it's almost more charitable to go with the former. And this is what bugs me, I guess. I wish that the truth was more important. To me, the truth is important, or at least my best guess at the truth, because I don't always get to know it. Sometimes I have to speculate. Sometimes the truth is subjective and we can argue about it. And I think that's beautiful. But right now in this story, it has never been more apparent how unimportant the truth is. And that is not a blanket statement on everybody, right? I think there are a lot of members of the media, Star Tribune in particular, that I think have done a very good job of being deferential to the truth, the real truth, trying their best to get the real truth. And I appreciate that deeply. And I wish everybody else was a little more like them. But so the answer to that question of how did this end, to me, if you were to try to paraphrase that for yourself, what would you say that answer was? Well, it was that they decided they were good right now. Later, this happened.
Quincy, can you say definitively then the door is closed with Rodgers? It kind of sounds like ultimately it was his decision and we're still looking for a veteran quarterback. Can you say that door is...
I don't know that it was ultimately, I don't know that I said it was ultimately his decision. I don't want to make sure that, I think that I said that given where we are scenario-wise, we didn't think it was the right move at this time. It is also his decision to whether he signs with another team, not. That's ultimately up to another player. For me to sit here and say that, anything's 100% forever, that's just not the job, right? We're responding to scenarios and different information as it comes. So, obviously things can change, but right now we're really happy with our room and we're going to look to upgrade it in different ways. But for now, we're really excited.
That reporter there, I believe that was Dawn Mitchell of Fox 9. She's not somebody that I think very often is like going for the flamey headline thing. I think she was just genuinely asking a clarifying question and had like a stranger, because his answer was a little bit weirdly worded. So I think that was just a clarification that was needed, but that's important, right? Okay. So now we have a clear story here. And if you think Kwesi's just like lying about everything, then sure. But we have a clear story here. Aaron Rodgers approaches the Vikings. They consider it because it would be kind of malpractice for them not to consider these kinds of options. You got to think about it, right? Or you're not really doing your job. They think about it. They decide they're okay with their room. They tell him, no, thank you. They leave the door open just in case someone gets hurt or something unforeseen happens. He spent a lot of this presser talking about unforeseen, about, kind of not knowing what you don't know. But ultimately, they were the ones that told him no right now, and now it's up to him whether or not he goes and signs with the Steelers or another team, or he stays by his cell phone and waits for the Vikings to call in the event that circumstances change. But that is the crux of this to me, that yes, the idea of Aaron Rodgers on the Vikings is not 0%, and it probably will never be. How can you ever say never, right? It's football. Stranger things happen all the time. But that it would require a change in circumstance. Something new needs to be added to this equation. As it stands now, it's JJ McCarthy, it's Brett Rippon, it's whoever else they add. If something changes, like a player getting injured or a weird trade offer coming in for some other quarterback or something like that, then maybe they revisit the idea. But that's where it's at right now. So if you want that clarity, that's that clarity. And you make whatever you want to make of that, but that is where we are at. Until something changes, the Aaron Rodgers Vikings thing is over. Something has to change, and I don't know what that thing really would be or how likely it is.